Welcome to Skatepark 101 with the Skatepark Project. If you're not familiar with the Skatepark Project, we're formerly the Tony Hawk Foundation. We're essentially the same thing. We just had a name change, still Tony's baby. Started 18 years ago, supporting thousands of skatepark projects across the country. We've granted funds to 581 skate parks that have opened all across the country. We're here to help. So hit us up if you have questions or you want to talk about a project. My name is Alec Beck. I'm the programs manager. I will be likely working with you if you're working on a skate park project. Let's get in here. Now, this is going to be recorded and posted again at a later time if you can't stick with us. This concept in this Skatepark 101 class is essentially, or webinar is essentially geared for the local citizen. It's not necessarily geared for the government employee, but if you are a government employee, this may be useful. So feel free to reach out to our staff regardless. Contact at skatepark.org to chat about your project or goals, and we can give you some one-on-one time. How deep are we going? Somewhere between work with your city and make a skate park. Somebody telling you that, probably the very helpful, but the least amount of help you can get, and the entire skate park development guide. So we're going to go pretty deep, but not so deep. You can still learn a lot more by going to publicskateparkguide.org. If you're serious about this, that's going to be your resource for written materials to learn about the ins and outs of this process. What we're covering today: the what, where, and why of skate park information, the who, which is the definition of a skate park advocate, the how, which is the process. We'll go over the FAQ, some resources, and some questions. I'm going to try to hop through this pretty quickly because it's a lot of information. You can always go back and check or type a question in the comments and we'll go from there. Thanks, Kyle, for letting us know the audio is okay. All right, skate parks, what are they? Most people know, but they are a play space, a recreational facility. There are a lot of definitions for a skate park: a gym, a studio. You know, you can name it a lot of things, but really it's a recreational facility. The modern definition for a contemporary skate park is a public concrete action sports recreational facility that is free to use, accessible to all abilities, and designed and built by professional skate park builders with input from the local community. It's quite a definition. It's not in Webster's dictionary, but that's our definition right now, at least from what I put together recently. But you can kind of get the idea. Where are they located? Well, they're pretty much always located on public land. If you're working towards a public skate park, it's got to be on public land. Sometimes private land is leased to the public, leased to the city to be public, but public is the key here. We'll get into site selection later. Now, why? Well, this is obvious to a lot of people. It's not obvious to a lot of people as well. If you skate, BMX, scooter ride, roller blade, or inline skate, wheelchair motocross, if you do any of that stuff, it's going to be obvious why this is an important and valuable space. But as you'll see, it's going to be your job as a potential skate park activist or advocate to explain why. So, you know, it's activity in the community. It develops health outcomes in your community. There's community engagement, et cetera. There's so many reasons why. And frankly, one of the easiest ones to explain is that this activity exists in your town already, but in unsafe environments. It's something that's obvious to a lot of people, but the people that you're going to be interacting with are likely going to need to, they're going to need to learn what it's all about, and that's where you come in. So let's clarify some things. What is a skate park? On the left, you'll see a pretty decent prefabricated skate park. That place looks like a lot of fun. However, it's going to deteriorate. It's not made of concrete. All these materials, these composite materials, wood, metal, held together with screws on a concrete slab. The weather, when it gets hotter and colder, the materials expand and contract, and it just starts to fall apart over time. It's not even the composite materials of some of the specialty skate ramp stuff is not as robust as concrete. So that's on the left. You look on the right, there is a beautiful concrete skate park and plaza, and you can see the difference. That thing looks like it's going to be there in 30 years. It's built with the same principles as lots of buildings and monuments and things like that. So big difference there. On the left, that's a temporary skate park. On the right, that's a skate park. So we stopped granting funds to prefabricated skate parks in 2011, concrete only. Let's move on. Where do skate parks come from? There's a big assumption that some cities build skate parks and some don't. Well, it's kind of true. However, the reality is that skate parks aren't usually placed into city plans like other sporting facilities, such as baseball diamonds, basketball courts. And baseball and basketball have been around for a fair amount longer than skateboarding. Skateboarding's kind of only been around for, what, 50, 60 years, maybe a little more? It sounds like a lot, but contemporary skate parks are fairly new. So city council, parks department, city manager, they're not really, it's the momentum of these sports, the leagues, things like that is not upholding the need to automatically put those in city plans. Skate parks are created when regular people get involved, and that's why you are here, which is great. Thank you for being here. Sometimes a single bit of effort can convince a willing city to run a project, a petition, a letter, speaking at a city council meeting, but honestly, it's really rare. You hear people say, oh, we did a petition 5 years ago and nothing ever happened. Well, not surprising, frankly. However, we're going to teach you how to do it the way that's really going to get you to the finish line. Now, most skate parks come from regular people starting and running a skate park project. Let's move on. The key to creating a skate park is a sustained effort and ongoing cooperation with the city. Who would do a thing like this? Who in their right mind would volunteer years of their time to get this done? Well, the answer is anyone. We've seen advocates of all shapes, sizes, age, backgrounds, creeds, everything create skate parks. Some people can help. Some experience can help. Certain skills will help, but these skills needed can be learned along the way. So for a lot of people, running a skate park project is a learning experience, and you walk away with some new skills, which is really, really cool, and a great new network of people. Now, a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy is called an advocate. Similar to an activist, an advocate works with the powers that be. A person who, I'm not going to just jump into the definition of activist versus advocate, but perhaps instead of protesting outside the building, it would be more like working your way into the building to make a change. That's kind of a rough definition. It's not a great definition, but a person who advocates for or publicly supports a skate park project is called a skate park advocate, which might be what you are. So these are some examples of who become skate park advocates. In the center here is the legendary Terry Burke Iserling. She's one of the most lovely people you'll ever meet, and this is in Lakeside, California, surrounded by her skate park family, and she worked her butt off to get this park done. Let's see a couple other examples. This is Port Chester, New York. Kenny Manning, Officer Kenneth Manning, who's actually not in the police uniform, but in the black t-shirt and cool sunglasses, with his crew and what looks like a news anchor out there doing a spot on the skate park. But as you can hear, it's the McKinleyville, California, the Humboldt Skate Park Collective. So you can see all sorts of people, ages, it's really just regular people, folks. Regular people make skate parks happen, even when you get hands-on here like Laramie, Wyoming. We'll do another webinar on DIY stuff at some point. Now, a lot of people say, but my town won't listen to me. Well, that sucks. They should. It's their job. Do not forget that, but also play nice and be respectful. So skaters, BMX riders, a lot of people, they have experience getting kicked out in town. They have experience being yelled at, being arrested, being put on the curb, being violently accosted by property owners or security guards. So there's some lack of self-confidence and skewed perceptions on both sides after these engagements. So this is old baggage, right? This old communication between skaters and authority figures is, well, it's baggage. Now, this new opportunity to work towards a skate park project, you can present yourself and your activity in a neutral setting to build bridges and dissolve misconceptions. This new opportunity for communication is truly an opportunity. Easier said than done, but it's an opportunity. So who can get a skate park in their town? As we've seen, anybody, as long as they're willing to learn, listen, work as a group, and commit to the goal. So let's talk about learn. Regardless of how much you think you know, there's always going to be more to learn about the process or the stakeholders. If you're a veteran city engagement, capital improvement leading, civic-minded hurricane, as my grandma used to be called, if you have a lot of experience working in the city, there's still more you can learn about the skate community. If you have a lot of experience in the skate community, there's a lot you can learn about the city. So humility and being able to learn is very important in this process. Listening. An open mind and an open ear will help you understand your community's many needs and help you stay flexible as you navigate the many obstacles on the way to this goal. Working as a group, nothing is ever done alone. Ever, 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 ever. Nothing is ever done alone. Keep your ego in check, look for strengths in others, and value what others can bring to the project. Now, of course, there's going to be a little bit of ego in this because if you're stepping up, bravo. If you're the one to step up in your town and make the skate park happen, that's great. You should keep that charge and that electricity that you have to have courage to step up in your town. That being said, when others step up, it's no longer just you, So keep that in mind. And finally, commit to the goal. Just like in skating or wheelchair motocross or any other action sports, if you don't try and try again, you'll never land the trick. So just stay persistent, use the resilience you've learned in the skate park. Now, if no one else is doing this, it may be your turn. I hope that makes sense. If no one else in town is stepping up to do this, don't wait. It's your turn. All right, now to the how. How does it all happen? This is breaking it down in a very simple way, but it's a pretty long and complicated process. So we'll just jump right through it. The 5 steps: there's project preparation, community engagement, fundraising, design and construction, and then opening and operation. For project preparation, this is where you are right now. You're learning about it. You're going to get organized and then create your core group. We'll get into that. Let's just jump into that now. We'll go with the other parts. But essentially, this is the large chapter breakdown. Project preparation. You'll learn the process. You'll understand the commitment, which is an ongoing process. You'll get organized. You'll use your tools, new tools and habits. You don't have them already. Getting comfortable with communication skills is important. Your mental and emotional preparation. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You want to be really smart about this. Take care of yourself. Creating your core group is a big first step, and then your core group meeting and first tasks will come along soon. All right, let's jump into it. Learning the process. This is an ongoing process. There's always more to learn. Utilize resources for knowledge. Become the skate park expert in your town. Again, always more to learn, but you'll be the one that you'll be the gal or the guy who people come to say, okay, so I kind of don't understand how this works. And you'll do your best to help them understand. You'll utilize resources for support. Do not carry this weight alone. There will be times where you feel like you're carrying this weight alone, and that's okay. But if that's the case, call us. Let's talk about it. It's a lot to do. But utilize your friends, your family, your teachers, your allies in your community to help you along with this. People want to get involved with something cool, and building a skate park in your town is pretty dang cool. All right, learn from all your stakeholders: the city, the skaters, the parents, the neighbors, the NIMBYs. NIMBYs are people who kind of oppose something being built in your town. NIMBY stands for not in my backyard, meaning don't build anything here because I'm an old grouch or a young grouch. Understanding the commitment. So a cost for a skate park is about $50 per square foot. This is poured in place concrete, right? So a neighborhood skate park's roughly 10,000 square feet. 10,000 times 50, $500,000. Sounds like a crazy amount of money, and it's a lot of money. But in terms of public recreational facilities or capital improvement projects, which are big physical projects that a city takes on, $500,000 is not a crazy amount of money. And it's not going to come from you selling one cupcake at a time. So don't worry. Now, the time commitment. This is something you might want to worry about or at least consider. This is a volunteer, multi-year project, usually 2 to 4 years. You'll hear a lot of people say, oh, we just finished our 20-year skate park project. And usually that's because a couple of advocacy groups came and passed that project along. But those are older projects. The average length of a skate park project is shrinking due to better understanding from the municipality and the popularity of the concept. So as you learn more, think about whether or not you want to do this. It's a little bit of work every week for a couple of years. Sometimes you'll get some time off. Sometimes you'll need to do crunch time, full weekend. But it's volunteer-based work, which is literally physically affects the human body in a positive way, along with your mental and emotional state. And it's it's a great way to connect with the community. So keep that in mind before you take any big steps. If you're like, yeah, I kind of don't want to commit to this, but you really will just take it one step at a time. Now, getting organized. If you do decide to hop into this project, you want to get a notebook or a folder, take notes when you can, even if you're not used to it. You'll develop a good habit to use later in life. Digital note applications on your phone can work, but if you have your phone out in a meeting, it kind of looks like you might be texting, and it just looks a little lame. If your handwriting sucks like mine does, you might you might practice, and you'll get better at it, and your handwriting will look better and better. But it's a good habit to get into. If people see you taking notes with a notebook, they're going to think you're serious, which that's what serious people do. Large contacts section of notebook. Write down emails and phone numbers. You can put these in your phone and on your computer as well. But follow up with people you connect with over the project with an intro email. That's a pretty good tip. If you connect with somebody, hit them up and say, hey, nice to connect with you. Organize folders on your computer to insert documents, images, letters, and receipts. A little organizing effort each time is easier than way more effort to find something later. If someone asks a question you don't know, write it down and get back to them. This is a really good one at the bottom. If someone asks a question you don't know, say, hey, that's a great question. I actually don't know. I'm going to find out and get back to you. Take down their number, their email, find out and get back to them. They will be impressed with your follow-through. All right, communication skills. And we'll go into how these fit into the whole thing, but essentially, you're going to want to know how to write an email, and you can use the internet to learn this. Be kind, have proper email etiquette. Don't say, hey, I need this right now. Understand that people have their own schedules. Spelling and grammar is pretty important. Luckily, computers do a lot of that for us. Make reasonable asks, like I said, etiquette-wise. Patience, if somebody takes a week to get back to you, that's okay. And make an email address that makes sense, not the one you created in high school that's shreddycougar42069@gmail.com. City council members are going to be looking at this. Parents are going to be looking at this. It should be, alec@ourtownskatepark.com or mckinleyvilleskatepark or at Gmail. You know what I mean? Something simple and clean and family friendly, for goodness sakes. You'd be surprised at how many crazy and fun emails we've seen, but it's not always the best route to go. Now, promotional material creation, flyer design and placement, make it simple, clarity over cool. And you might have somebody in your group who can help you with this. If you don't, just type it out on Word, make it big letters. It doesn't have to be that pretty. In fact, sometimes it's endearing to have something that's not. But if you have a project, or if you have a member of your project that can do some sort of graphic design, that can help. Now, digital project promotion and social media. This is creating accounts, making your handle or @name very clear, McKinleyville Skate Park, @McKinleyville Skate Park or whatever, something like that. Rules of engagement. If somebody's being negative, how do you act? How do your people and your team act? How does your social media manager act? Put an anchor post, say where you are, what you're doing, things like that. That's Tony Hawk laughing in the background. We gave him a little surprise this morning because he's releasing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remaster today, and we put letters all over the vert ramp with the big skate letters, and we hung a secret tape in the window. So stoked to hear he's stoked. All right, let's get back to it. Semi-public website essentials. Make a simple website. See if you can get the cost of it donated, and make it clear, simple. Tell them what you're there to do. Explain the value of the skate park. We'll do a whole digital promotion thing another time. Semi-public speaking. Speaking with friends, skaters, core group. This is when you're talking to the homies. You're talking to people that you're used to talking to, and it may be uncomfortable at first, but you got to get used to it, my friends, and you'll get better at it. You're going to be nervous. Your heart's going to be pounding. My heart is pounding right now, doing this online. So, you get used to it. Public speaking, introducing the project to council, local groups, and local news. That's a little bit more stressful, but you'll get used to it. Start with talking with the skaters in your core group. Moving on, mental, emotional preparation, and resilience. Most projects seem impossible. That's fine. Just focus on the next step. Take it one task at a time. Some will tell you it's impossible, that they don't like it, or they don't like you. That's fine. If you don't necessarily want everybody to like you, that's okay. Some will say mean things about you or skaters or the activity at the skate park. Just don't take it personally. Some people will lose their cool. I've been yelled at in city council meetings. I've seen a 65-year-old woman tell a 9-year-old boy that his opinion doesn't matter. You have to keep your cool, stay calm, stay kind. You're going to get riled up. Just prepare yourself and prepare your team. When you go into a city council meeting with a bunch of skaters, tell everybody, hey, stay off your phone, be cool. If somebody says something dumb about BMX riding or skateboarding, just be quiet and you can address it when it's your turn to speak. Save face, be cool. Now, create your core group. This is where it really starts to get real. The core group is your advocacy team. You meet regularly to advance the project. Begin to bring in people that might commit time to supporting the project. Now, these people are going to come and go. It's okay. It's a volunteer position, but the core group members stay as long as they can, usually for the duration of the project. You kind of have your core group, and then some stragglers who come in and out of the core group, and then the rest of the community who's supporting your effort. Some skills and traits that can be helpful to have in core group members: civic experience, meaning city government or public projects; graphic design; grant writing, that's huge; social media, media production, making a video about your project; website design; or just being generally responsible is helpful. Now, your first core group meeting and first tasks. Wherever you can meet safely, whether it's the local baseball field or the park or the old torn up skate park, especially, or it's online during COVID-19 using precautions. Consistency is key, and you'll probably be digital for now, and that's okay. Your first task will be to introduce yourself to each other, discuss what you've learned about the process so far, and listen to each other's desires, needs, and concerns regarding the project. You may not have all the answers, and that's okay. Your first major task will be to name the skate park project. Keep it simple so people will recognize it right away. Use the name of your town, city, area in skate park or action sports park or something else. You can get creative, but just make sure that it's instantly understandable. It's really important to make sure that it's instantly understandable. You don't want to be too creative. All right, next stage, community engagement. This is when this is when you've done your core group, you've named your project, you're introducing your project to the local skaters, you learn the local government structure, you find and introduce your concept to hopefully the ideal government employee. You then, depending on which path you take, you'll introduce your project to the council relative to whatever support you have. And then you'll continue to introduce the project to other stakeholders and media as you begin the fundraising stage. So let's go into this and we'll get through it quick. Introducing a project to the local skate community, creating a simple flyer to get their attention, putting it in spaces that they will see. Quote, "Our town needs a skate park. Join us and be part of the project. Saturday, 10 a.m., Starbucks," or whatever. Something that's safe and simple and open for everybody. Keep in mind, people have work schedules. Weekends are good. If it has to be in the weekday, go in the evening. Introduce yourself to the skaters. If you're not a skater, that's fine. They know you're willing to help and they're going to be stoked. Let them know you're thinking about doing this. See who might want to get involved. If anyone has any special skills to contribute. Get numbers for text updates and emails. Write this down in your handy dandy notebook. Blue's Clues, shout out right there. For those who want to help but don't want to be in the core group, let them know their main job will be to someday show up to a few city council meetings, raise their hand, and be cool. Don't fall asleep, argue, or be on their phones. And write down their numbers too. Put them in a separate column. Here's a good example of Spring Valley Skate Park. We need your support. You're invited to open house to discuss a new community park in Spring Valley. Now, this is a simple white sheet of paper for our podcast listeners. It's got a map of the site. Now, we'll go into site. Don't worry about site yet. If this is your first meeting, don't put anything about site. But an example skate park and something about your town. This particular example is a little bit advanced, but I just want to show it because it's simple. It just has the date, the time, we need your support, the name of the skate park group, and the Facebook and Instagram social media handles. Please attend this meeting to make your vote count on getting the SB skate park built. It's huge, huge, very effective. All right, learn the local governmental structure. This you don't have to do a ton of work on, but it's going to make it easier for you. Head to your city's website and look around. Is there a city council? Is there a Parks and Recreation department? You may be able to call and have someone explain how things work if you ask nicely. Use the internet to learn about local government. Don't spend hours, but spend half an hour trying to figure it out. Watch some YouTube videos. We'll do some more on that at some point. Most capital improvement projects or large physical projects like a skate park happen on a city plan timeline over years or decades even. You'll hear like, oh, the 7-year plan or whatever. You'll be inserting a project into an existing time frame for all other projects the city is working on. So keep that in mind. Now, this is something that is important. There's an opportunity for you to connect with the ideal person in the government. Somewhere in your local government, in the parks department, somebody might already be thinking about doing a skate park. Or somebody understands skate parks more. Maybe they used to skate. If your town has a Parks and Recreation department, call them and ask who there might be interested in talking about a new project to put a skate park in town. Let them know that you've been learning how to be a public skate park advocate and that you're a local citizen who is here to help. Start a conversation about it. Ask if they've thought of doing it before or if they'd be open to working with a dedicated local group who wants to help. If they aren't helpful at all, you might ask if they recommend anyone else who might be interested in talking about it. If not, you might have learned something. What might have you learned? Well, you might have learned which potential pathway you go down. So this is important. We don't talk about it very much, but most skate park projects fall on a spectrum between two paths. Remember how I was describing what there may be somebody in the city who already wants to build a skate park? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, sometimes it's in between. So here are the two general pathways. Example one, you quietly introduce the concept to a department in the city government. A city insider loves the idea and wants to run with it. Insider meaning a city employee, loves the idea and wants to run with it. You and your group take cues from the insider, and the city government pulls the project forward with your help. That's number one. The second end of the spectrum is you quietly introduce the concept to a department in the city, but the city seems less than supportive. Oh, we don't need a skate park. Oh, I don't see a lot of skaters around. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. This is when you and your group get loud, not in a lame way, in a cool way. You get productive. You start to get to work. You convince the city and the public of the value of the project. Your group pulls the project forward with an increasingly supportive city government in tow. Most projects fall somewhere in between these options. Now, here's how action works within those pathways. Pathway one, you have an insider who wants to support the skate park. Ask your insider what the best time to introduce the project to the city is. Likely the next city council or parks board meeting, but they may know about a better time due to current agenda items. It's possible they want to work on the project from the inside more before presenting it. This is inserting a project gracefully into the long-term city plan. Pathway two, this is when y'all lead the way. City's not that interested in supporting it, that's cool. You'll make it interesting. This is when you introduce your project to the city council meeting or parks board. You are leading the project. Be bold yet humble. You will be teaching them, gaining support along the way, and trying to work together more and more. Be loud and proud. All right, introducing the project at the city council meeting. This is a big one. So once you figured out what which direction you're going, eventually you're going to end up at the city council meeting or the parks board meeting. So do a little preparation to know what you're going to say. You're going to be nervous. It's okay. Keep it short, but make your point. As Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, be sincere, be brief, be seated. So here's some tips. Thank the council, introduce yourself, the name of your project, and any group members there in attendance. You can say, they can introduce themselves, but don't introduce 20 people. That's too much. If you have 3, you can introduce them by name and age. Otherwise, you turn around and say, who here is to support the skate park? Everybody raises their hands. It's very effective. City council is not used to youth or really a lot of people coming in to build something and support the city and doing what really is the city's job. They're used to people coming in and complaining about things, to be perfectly honest. So they're going to be stoked. All right, so first one is thank the council, introduce yourself, the project, and group members in attendance. The second one, in your own words, help the council to understand the value of skateboarding, other action sports, and the skate park itself. An inclusive place to go for youth and adults to exercise, engage in creative expression, to achieve self-set goals, to build resilience, to engage in community. I could go on for hours talking about why skate parks are important and action sports are valuable. But make it personal. Tell your own story and help them understand why it's really important. Now the third step is ask if they agree that the town needs more skate space. And you might need to do a little bit more research if you already have some skate space, but we'll get into that. Ask if they agree that the town needs more skate space, and ask if and how they would be willing to support the project and in turn the community. Here's some examples. This is a smaller presentation to a parks board meeting. This gentleman's doing a great job. He's got his little presentation going on, and we'll do a webinar on making a project pitch deck. But you don't really need a pitch deck. Honestly, you just stand out there and talk, at least for now. This is some skaters coming out of a city council meeting. They went in, and you can tell they're being loud on the outside, but they were probably very respectful on the inside. But look at this, young folks getting engaged with local government. It's enough to make a grown person cry. I love it. This is when somebody says, hey, who's here for the skate park? Everybody raises their hand. Fantastic. Now, be cool in a city council meeting. If this cat can make it through a city council meeting without checking their phone or falling asleep, so can you. Moving on. Next steps with the city. Steering committee. Over time, your group will request and develop a skate park steering committee or something similar in which a city official or two will help you navigate getting something built through the city. Stay consistent with these meetings and tasks. If the city wasn't supportive initially, keep at it. They'll get on board. It may take a while, but they work for you. You know what I mean? Keep that in mind. Just keep at it and be that local group that is consistent and doing things and rallying the community and making it happen. Now, this is important. Site. The city will be the ones to determine the site of the skate park. Just because there's an empty lot or a part of the baseball field way in the back, or your grandma has a house that she's willing to tear down for the skate park. Way to go, grandma. But it doesn't help much at this point. Don't mention, this is such a key critical component for an early skate park project. Don't mention any potential site. If the public asks, tell them the city's working on finding the appropriate site for the skate park. If you tell somebody that, oh yeah, we're working on a skate park, it's probably gonna go over here. If that person lives next to that, you're gonna build opposition to your project before you've even really started. So, and it's probably for a site you won't even use. Ultimately, the city, it's very rare that a group starts and say, yeah, we think it's going to be at this site, and then it ends up at that site. Usually it's somewhere else. But you can learn more about site selection at publicskateparkguide.org. And finally, ensuring quality. It'll be your job to inform the city that only experienced skate park builders should be involved. We'll go into that more later. Now, fundraising, lots to do here. This is probably the longest stretch of time. A lot of the other stuff we've already gone through can be done within a couple months, to be honest with you. Fundraising is going to take some time. Now, again, a skate park insider, the city might help. The city might say, hey, yeah, we actually have some Quimby funds or a lot of park funds available to help you do this. It's pretty much already paid for. That happens. But a lot of people have to do fundraising for their skate park. So let's talk about it. First, you're going to determine how much you need to raise and what the timing of the project will be. You're going to need to get a legal place for donations. You're going to make a plan, consider timing. You're going to connect with community groups and service organizations. You'll connect with businesses, institutions, grassroots fundraisers will be created by you and your crew. You'll just grants. We'll go over that. Media appearances will happen that you'll set up and be involved with. In-kind donations will come into play, and then we'll tell you what the main rule of thumb is for fundraising. All right, the scope of the project. Use the tools on publicskateparkguide.org website to determine a good size for what the community needs. In general, every community needs a contemporary concrete skate park. If you have a prefabricated skate park, even if it's like 2-3 years old, now is the time to start talking about replacing that. It's not going to last for 10-15 years. It might, but you're going to have to start replacing stuff and checking screws, and it's an old school model. So there's no better time to start than now. If you already have other concrete skate parks in town, you want to use Google Earth to figure out how big they are. You can right click and drag a measure distance tool and multiply the length and the width and figure out how big those skate parks are, or go out with a tape measure and then use the skate park adoption model on skateparkguide.org to figure out how much you need. Now, in general, everybody needs a skate park. Communities with over 25,000 residents are likely to 10 square foot park. As a very loose rule of thumb, again, use the skateparkguide.org skate park adoption model. But as a loose rule of thumb, large, densely packed cities need 10,000 square foot skate park for every 50,000 residents. We're talking about cities. So moving on, work with your insider or skate park steering committee to arrive at an appropriate size for the skate park according to the local site availability and reasonable cost. If you have, hey, we have 100,000 square feet available, yeah, but you don't need to spend 20 years raising money for 100,000 square foot skate park. That being said, shout out to Des Moines, Iowa, who is making an 88,000 square foot skate park right now, the biggest in the country, and they're almost done. Super exciting. That type of stuff elevates the profile for skate parks everywhere. Multiply the square footage that the city thinks you have by $50. If the city's like, okay, we have a site, it's about 6,000 square feet, multiply that by $50. That's your fundraising goal, more or less. Your scope depends on how long it might take you to get to that goal. And if it's a $500,000 goal, you might want to talk to the city and see how long they think it's going to take to get there with your help. So one thing at a time. You may not have all the answers. You can kind of have a rough scope guess at first. 10,000 square foot and $500,000 is a good goal to have if you just want to start with that. General plan and timing. Have your group use a calendar and determine what is the ideal pathway to raise your funds. When and where can you do events? Digital or in person? Well, right now, digital for sure, but do research on this and learn from the Public Skate Park Development Guide. That's when we say PSDG, we mean the Public Skate Park Development Guide. Build a project pitch deck and fundraising one sheet to give the potential funders as a follow-up to close the deal. And we'll do this in another webinar. But a one sheet just saying, like, here's the value of the skate park, here's who's involved, here's how much we need, here's the giving levels that you can give at. Will the city pitch in? Maybe, they might. You'll likely have to do some work no matter what. The more work you do, the more likely the city will pitch in. Find a local grant writer. This is so crucial. Hopefully there's somebody in the city who can apply for grants on your behalf to work towards grant funding for the project. Now pace yourself, but keep a good pace. All right, now you'll need a legal account to accept donations. You don't want to be tossing this into your personal savings account, right? There are very good reasons not to do that. Essentially, you need an account to legally accept donations and provide tax-deductible receipts if possible. Option 1, the city may be willing to set up a new city account for the skate park project. Make sure it's only for the skate park project and not for any park project. You don't want them saying, yeah, we needed to add 30 grand onto the swing set project, so your project is going to take another year. That sucks. We've seen it happen. Just be cool about it, but make sure that it's an independent account. And you might want to get that one in writing, but be very nice about that request. Option 2, find a fiscal sponsor. This is the most common option. This is a local service organization like the Rotary, Kiwanis, etc., to be your bank account. They usually take a 5 to 10% cut for doing the paperwork. Sometimes they donate it. Now, option 3, which is somewhat popular, but it's a lot of work. You start a nonprofit. You start a 501c3 nonprofit. Basically, we only recommend doing this if you have a plan to build, 5, 10 skate parks, or even 2 skate parks, essentially. So go for what you think is responsible. But if you're just aiming for one skate park, start with asking the city if they'll do an account. Otherwise, find a fiscal sponsor. And there may be a fiscal sponsor opportunity that's not quite the city, but close to the Parks Department, like the Friends of the McKinleyville Parks Department. Sorry, McKinleyville, to keep using you as an example. You're doing great out there. All right, community groups and service organizations. Search for, contact, and begin to work with service organizations and community groups. Look for groups that have similarities in mission, health outcomes, inclusion, youth support, community engagement, community revitalization, etc. Aim to form alliances and partnerships rather than to get donations. The donations will come, but aim to form alliances and partnerships because they may have more they can give you than what their donation will be worth through supports, people power, all sorts of things that they can, even network. They can get you somebody else who might be able to help you financially. Call them, introduce yourself, and explain the project. Ask if they might be willing to align with or support the project. Follow up with your deck and your one sheet. Now, again, the one sheet can be very simple, and the deck can be very simple, but you just want to follow up no matter what, even if it's just an email with, here's how you can donate. If you're wondering how to find these service organizations, go on Google Maps or some sort of online map tool and search for foundation or community or Rotary, Kiwanis, Boys and Girls Club, Masons, all sorts of stuff like that. And look online, do some research. You're going to be doing a lot of research, not a lot, but enough to learn more about your community. Now, if their answer is no, thank them for their time and let them know you'll be following up later to let them know about the progress. Also ask for leads on other supporters. Say, oh, yeah, that's okay if you're not interested. Do you recommend anybody who you think might be interested? See what they say, write it down. Moving on, here you go. Here's a good example. The Rotary Club helped sponsor the skate park, and this is the backing. The concrete will be poured over that. So when that wood is peeled off, it'll say Rotary and concrete. Very cool. Businesses and institutions, like that Rotary picture, you may have naming rights available. Maybe not, but essentially there are so many ways to fundraise on the grassroots side of things. We'll talk about that more, and it's too much to put in this presentation, but essentially we'll get to it in a second. Businesses and institutions. Connect with long-standing local businesses and institutions. Mutual marketing opportunities may help. Ask for more leads and advice. Reach out to doctors, dentists, and hospitals. Think outside the box. Grassroots events. Good for community support, not always good for raising funds. You're not going to raise $500,000 with car wash money. You might raise 20 grand with car wash money, and that 20 grand might make all the difference. But it keeps you in the public eye, and in our eye, and in the city eye while you're working on the project. Sometimes a good idea is to do community support efforts, cleanups, food drive, etc., without a dollar request back. Show you give back. Do something cool for the community. You'll meet more stakeholders, you'll engage with more donors, you'll have raffles, donation buckets, fun participatory events. Go on our website, look around the internet, so many different types of grassroots events you can do. Think creatively. But keep in mind what you might get. Aside from, doing your kind of community support efforts, the cleanups and food drives, when you do an event, keep in mind how much it takes your group to do versus how much you get back. And it shouldn't be necessarily transactional when you're doing cleanups and food drives, but every other time you need to think, hey, it's going to take us 3 weeks to build this thing and it's going to get us $200. Maybe it's not worth it. So consider that. Efficiency. Here's a good example of a skate park cleanup. Check out the skate park's progress and help clean the surrounding park, followed by a raffle for volunteers. It's a good way to get people in. Skate Park Respect, Ferndale Skate Park Build to Play, etc. You can see the contact info. It's another good example of a simple thing. Grants. The quickest way to arrive at your fundraising goal is to apply for local, regional, state, and federal grant opportunities. There are usually a lot of regional and state grant funding opportunities. There are some local grant funding opportunities, and there aren't a ton of federal grant opportunities, but they're out there, and keep an eye out for them. There are site cleanup opportunities. Sometimes a toxic waste site can be cleaned up and you can get funding for that, which might boost your skate park funding as well. Anyway, these are funding opportunities in the tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This really gets you closer to your goal. It takes a little more time and you need somebody who has a little experience, or you can learn to get the experience yourself. But essentially, you may be able to apply as a novice, but if you enlist the help of experienced grant writers, whether a volunteer or in the city staff, to apply on your behalf, you'll likely have a better chance of raising more funds more efficiently. Let's move on. Media appearances. Call and set things up. Local and regional papers, TV networks, magazines, etc. Locations may shift from doing one in the streets or a street spot. Clearly, there's no place to skate here, no safe place to skate, to the meeting area where you meet every week, or to your potential site, to the events, to your partners' offices, to the construction of the skate park. You have opportunities to keep getting the local media involved. They love feel-good movies like this, feel-good stories like this. You're doing something really cool in your community, and they love pieces like that. All you got to do is call them and set things up. And don't neglect papers, magazines, etc. Share your story, but more importantly, share the value of skate parks. And they'll probably tell you what they want to hear from you, but make sure you get that in there. Share the value, help people understand. Always, always, always point people to a place to donate. A call to action, sending people to the website to donate, to a phone number to donate, or a physical mailing address to donate is key. Always end your pieces with that, and let them know this is an attempt to fundraise. Subtly if you can. In-kind donations. All right, fundraising. Anything like a thing or experience someone is willing to donate to the project that someone else might be willing to donate cash for is an in-kind donation. A donated item or experience can be a raffle item or auction item at your next event. If someone can't donate cash, this may be another way to support. Construction. Construction in-kind donations. This is a little different. This is usually when you're further along in the process. But when you do get your skate park designer and builder, often different companies, but both should be experienced. A little side note there. When you do get your designer and builder on board, you can ask them for an in-kind materials list. This will allow you to find materials the company would have to buy otherwise. But you go out and you get them donated. You call the concrete company, you call Home Depot or Lowe's or some local hardware store or a steel mill and get the rebar donated, or an equipment rental shop. There's stuff that you can get donated. Fill dirt. You can even have your public works department do some rough grading or clear the site if they're willing to donate it. Essentially, this removes costs or saves money from your overall project costs. Now, materials are very specific, so be in close communication with the builder. Now, here we are, the main rule of thumb for skate park fundraising. No money out. Keep it in the account. Do not spend any money you raised on anything. If you need something like a t-shirt or an ad buy or promotional material piece, ask if it can get donated. They'll likely donate it for you. Just don't pay money for anything, because it's a really slippery slope if you start using your own money that you've donated for promotional materials. We've seen it happen, and it makes projects last a lot longer, and not in a good way. All right, design and construction. Here we are. Design process using the design rendering for fundraising, waiting period, critical construction information, and other design considerations. All right, the design process. Finally, we're at the fun part. We're at the part that everybody thinks that making a skate park in their town starts with, getting real with the design and what it's going to look like. Now, essentially, you will leave it to the professionals, but you're going to want to get involved. If you have ideas, sketch them out, give them to your designer. This is going to feel like it's out of your hand at this point. It's been pretty hands-on for the entire skate park project up to this point. And this is probably like a year or two into the process where you really start, you nail down your designer and your city says, this is a designer we want to go with. Now, which designer do you choose? Well, the local skaters in your core group should make recommendations for their preferred designer using examples from real-world skate parks. The city usually hires the designer, and the designer creates design workshops or charrettes to get even more local input. Here's a design ad. A design workshop ad. Kind of cool, pretty professional. You can see it says, concept presentation and design workshop, free prize drawing and refreshments. Come be a part of creating Escondido's new skate spot. Learn more about the project and contribute to the design. Very cool. It's got the name, date, address, all of that. Super helpful. Now, using a design for fundraising can be very helpful. At this point, you likely are well into fundraising when you first see your design or an example of it. Use this on your fundraising materials. Prior to having an actual design, sometimes it's helpful to have a placeholder design. Say, this is what our skate park might look like. But you want to be clear about that, and having to explain it to everyone can be a pain. Just make sure if you do use that, you're putting in decently sized letters and asterisks that says this is a sample example park. Seeing the actual design will likely encourage more support. Even seeing a potential design or a placeholder design. Call the media when you get your design. Show them. Hold a little press conference. Not press conference. Just go to the park and hold up the sign. The design. All right, again, waiting period. You've likely finished fundraising around the time the designer turns the community-led designs into a finished set of construction documents, or CDs, which are basically blueprints for a skate park. At this point, it may feel like things are out of your hands because they are. The city and the designer are working together, and the local community is kind of hanging back a little bit. You should want to connect with them, but you don't want to bug them. So stay in contact with your steering committee or insider, and even the designer, but try not to bug them. They got a lot of work to do. Be patient, do more events if you need or want to. Just keep that community, like if you think it's been 6 months, like, okay, maybe we should do an event and say we're still here. We're still here, gang, even though stuff's going on behind the scenes. This is so, so, so important. If you walk away with one thing from this webinar, no matter how much money or time you spend on the skate park, it will be a waste of everybody's effort and donations if you don't have an experienced skate park construction firm building your skate park. It's as simple as that. You got to have somebody who knows what they're doing build this. The local GCs, general contractors, they may think they can build something, but this is complicated sculptural concreting involving waves of curvilinear rebar at exact tolerances. It's so complicated and really takes a lot of practice to get right. So you need a bid for a project, meaning go out and say, I need the lowest bidder list. And it's a good process. Cities have that, so nobody can say, hey, I'm the mayor and my brother has a construction company and he's going to do a great job, so we're going to choose him. It keeps corruption out of the equation. However, low bid doesn't necessarily mean the best person is building it. So you want to make sure they're qualified. So if the city needs to go out to bid for the project, insist that they do an RFQ, or a request for qualifications round. Now, when I say insist, I don't mean march in there and be crazy about it, but just let them know how important it is. There are lots of skate parks that get built with city money that just don't work. Have you tried to dribble on a lumpy basketball court? It's not going to work. It just doesn't work. Same thing with skate park. The tolerances are, it's just, we can go into it, but I think you all get the point. So the RFQ round, the request for qualifications round, is a round to accept qualifications from builders that make sure only experienced skate park builders can bid on the project. Pretty simple. You must be this tall or experienced to ride. And unfortunately, nobody should be learning how to build a skate park for the first time on your community's dime. It's kind of a harsh way to say it, but we want to see more skate park construction firms pop up. But we want to see that if you're spending the time to do this project, take the extra effort to make sure that it's not the first skate park somebody's building. You know what I'm saying? So you can talk with your designer to say, hey, what's some good language about an RFQ? but make sure that it's open to everybody and the designer's not just trying to get their own stuff in there. Call us if you have questions about this. This is a really critical component, and we spend a lot of time on it. So give us a call. This is important. Moving on, other design considerations. There are too many to list, but your city, core group, and designer should consider the following. Accessibility. I mean, site accessibility is one thing. You want it to be accessible from public transportation, walkable, bikeable, etc. But accessibility to the skate park itself. Can wheelchair motocross riders get into the park? Is it, can new inline skaters drop in on the smallest ramp, or is a small team? Have everybody in mind. A good skate park design works for the novice and the seasoned pro. Capacity is huge. You don't want one giant bowl where only one person can go at a time. I mean, maybe you do, but it just kind of leaves people out, and you yourself will spend more time waiting on the deck than you want to. Improve capacity and have that conversation with your designer and work on lanes or rooms, different ways that multiple people can use the skate park all at the same time. Flow is crucial. You want to be able to cruise the skate park and not be hopping off your board and having to walk back up. Modern designers who would pass an RFQ bar would probably, they know all of this, but you want to have the conversation. Now, amenities, trash cans are key. Put some trash cans in there. People talk to the city about that. When I say trash cans, recycling is really what I mean. Let's try to aim to recycle, and maybe put a sign up that says pack in, pack out, like it's a hiking trail. Just you're going to encounter trash. That's just, you have a recreational facility that attracts youth, and youth are still learning how to be good humans. So dealing with trash is part of that process. Water is nice as well. Other things, bathrooms, lighting, stuff like that. Unnecessary fencing and more. We have a podcast episode on this topic. Don't do a 12-foot fence around the whole thing. It's not necessary 95% of the time. A little fencing to keep the toddlers out of the area because there's the playground there is helpful, but we have more thoughts on that in the podcast, or reach out to us if you have questions. All right, we're almost done, people. Opening and operation, signage, rules, and hours of operation, grand opening, maintenance. Signage, rules, and hours should be consistent with local park rules. It's pretty simple. If you have questions, you can look at other skate parks around there, but it shouldn't be that the basketball court is open till 9 p.m. with lights and the skate park is open till 5 p.m. from 3 to 5 p.m. That's absurd. This is a recreational facility. It should be open and accessible to anybody, whether they go to school, they work 9 to 5, they need to go late in the evening. Work with what you can, and the rules should be pretty simple. The signage should say all that. The sign can be cool and simple. You can give it your own touch, put your sponsors on there if the city's willing to, etc. But you'll get there when you get there. Grand opening, woohoo! Time to celebrate. Congratulations. Really, you're going to find that when you drive by that park or you go skate at that park, you're going to feel so proud, like all that work was worth it. All that work is suddenly in the rearview mirror, and it didn't seem like it equates with how much joy you get out of it. And people will come up and shake your hand. I've had not a 5-year-old, he's probably 12, walk up to me at a skate park and ask if I was the person who helped build the skate park, and he shook my hand and said, thank you. And I still remember it. And that stuff happens. People are really grateful. So it's a good time to celebrate. Now, people who didn't do much work at all will certainly get credit. It happens. You know what I mean? Especially people in the city who maybe didn't have their hands on it directly will be up there cutting the ribbon. And that's okay. They do their job elsewhere, and without them, it probably wouldn't have happened in some way, shape, or form. Now, work with the local shops to get promotional gear for new skaters, if possible, to give away at the opening. Do a clinic, if possible. But you can do a demo as well. But really just keep it short, a couple speeches. If the city can give out some, thank you certificates with the stamp of the city on there, that's huge. Give those out to the local advocates who did a lot of the work. In general, though, keep it short and let them skate. Take pictures and videos and pat yourself on the back. All right, maintenance, this is a big question, but essentially the maintenance of a concrete skate park is minimal. It's concrete. Occasionally you'll get spray paint, but that can be washed off or wiped off. Removed professionally, just like the city has to do it elsewhere. But if graffiti shows up, clean it as quickly as possible so people don't think it's okay. The city should be willing to include the skate park recycling can emptying in the local maintenance routine. You should not be paying $10,000, $25,000 a year for maintenance. That's insane. You're helping do the city's job for them by building the skate park and raising money for the skate park. Once you're done with this project, you should be off the hook. There's no ongoing maintenance that should fall on your shoulders. Now, if you want to do clinics and start a skate class and have your own 501c3 and, you know, stuff like that. That's fine, but you shouldn't be on the hook for maintenance. This is the city's job. All right, FAQ, insurance. And these are all more complicated than I'm going through right now, and you can ask us more questions about it later, but usually it's under the city's general liability umbrella. Supervision, it should be unsupervised. The liability, state statutes often shield cities from liabilities, from, you know, recreational use activities like hang gliding, spelunking, hiking, skate parks, you know, stuff like that. Supervision, though, when you supervise something, it changes it. It basically says that, hey, the city's now in charge of this. So it changes the liability when you supervise something, which changes the insurance, which probably means you have to have paths and have to pay to recoup the costs of staffing it, to supervise it. It's just, and then the liability waiver, it's just a mess. The general contemporary standard is unsupervised and free, public, outdoor, etc. Now, if you need examples of this for your city, look to other contemporary skate parks in your state for more information and precedents. Should you put a vert ramp in? I slid this in because I like vert skating. Yeah, you can do it, but it's hard because it's usually wood. You don't really make a concrete vert ramp easily. We want to see more of it, but it's just got to be out of wood, and so it's a little bit different. There are some communities that are doing this, and I'm backing it. Even a smaller vert ramp, 10, 11 feet, it's a good call, but most, it's tough. You're calling an audible with your skate park project if you're throwing that in there. Call us and we can talk about it. Support. Get your allies in your community to support you, of course, your family, your friends, things like that, teachers. But the Skate Park Project offers guidance and technical assistance to anyone working on a skate park project. We want to be your support. Call us. Let us know what you're feeling, what your troubles are, what your wins are. Let's talk about it. It's why we're here. Resources, the Public Skate Park Development Guide online, publicskateparkguide.org. This is what you want to start reading. It's so well written. Thank you to Peter Whitley for putting it together, and the original book and the second copy of the book. Read it. You're going to have a good time. It's fun. It's in depth. You're going to learn more than you learned here today, certainly, and it may just save you time and money, and you'll get a better idea of how this all works. Now, the Skate Park Project staff, myself, Trevor Staples, who's our Built to Play project, Skate Park project manager, and Mickey Vukovic here, our community director, will really be able to help get you where you need to go, including myself here. So you can email us, you can get on the phone, you can hop into a project consultation, you can hop into our office hours on Zoom. Anybody's welcome for that. Or you can get grant funding for us. We give out grant funding twice a year. If you're just starting a skate park project and you're thinking about grant funding, from us at least, it's a little early, and that's okay. As long as you're working on a skate park project that's public and free, we're here to help. And we don't charge anything for it. So now, if you do want to support us, you can go to skatepark.org and donate to support our efforts. We don't charge to help people, but if you want to help us help people, please do. And finally, the Skate Park Podcast, available wherever you get your podcast or at skatepark.org/podcast. We have the first 10 episodes are kind of like this Skate Park 101. We will upload this Skate Park 101 to the podcast, and we'll also upload it to YouTube and Facebook again. But essentially the podcast is great because you can listen to it while working or drive time or doing the dishes, cleaning your house, whatever. And we go into specific examples of different communities. We talk to guests. We go over specific things like, there's so many topics, it's hard to explain, but there are about 40 episodes in there right now, and enough to keep your mind on skate parks and help you learning more. All right, questions, let's get into it. Ask me any questions if you want to. I'm going to jump back into this. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Let's go through some questions. Here we go. Alex Greenberg asks, what are your thoughts on adding maintenance upkeep even for concrete parks? This is an excellent question. He says, like to a long-term plan for the skate park. Adding maintenance upkeep for long-term concrete skate parks. Yeah, if you can make an account, if you have enough money to put 10 grand aside. What you don't want is the city saying, hey, you need to pay for our maintenance of cleaning and emptying trash. That's silly. But if you want to keep a side account, not a side account, but keep some money in the account to say, hey, eventually we're going to need to but fill in some cracks or do this and that. Sure, not a bad idea. And that leads me to the question about, which nobody asked, asked in this situation, but the question of, hey, can we put a cover over our skate park? You can put a cover over your skate park. It might be easier to build the skate park under a bridge. That way you don't have to pay for the cover, but there are complications there. This is a broader conversation. We'll talk more about it, but if you do want to do a cover, start to consider and get quotes for how much that might cost early. So you don't spend 3 years raising $500,000 and then say, hey, we want to put a cover on it, and the cover's $400,000. And now you're only halfway to your goal when you thought you were finished. So start thinking about that early if you need to. Good question, Alex. I think the answer is yes. If you want to have, add an account for maintenance upkeep for concrete parks, great. But I wouldn't stress about it. You can also watch it last for 10 years and then raise some money then if you need to. It's a good question. Chesterton Pham, great name. He said, please, we need a Central Phoenix, Arizona skate park, 4-foot half pipe and a snake run. No problem. I'll get the helicopter to bring it right over. Oh, I wish that were true. Sorry, my friend, we don't build skate parks. We help people build skate parks, as you've probably seen from this webinar if you're still here. So essentially, cool, 4-foot half pipe and a snake run sounds rad. You can do that, man. Nothing's, or ma'am, nothing is stopping you from doing this, right? Except maybe you're nervous about how long it'll take, or nervous about whether people will take you seriously. I'll tell you this, if you stand up and say, you know what, we need a skate park, who's in? The courage will find you, certainly. So get on it. Steve Zanko from Skatepark Respect, thanks for coming in there, great. Let's see, Trisha Witkowski. I'm so interested. I've been looking to do this in my son's memory. Wonderful, Miss Witkowski. It's a great idea. We see a lot, not a lot, but several memorial-based skate park projects. It's an excellent way to honor somebody's memory and have their name and memory live on in concrete for years to come. So I highly recommend that if that's something that you're in the unfortunate position to do. Let's see. Eugene Richter says, I'm still working on this for the kids in older town. And kids and older in my town of Omak. Yes, Omak, well done. Thanks, Eugene, well done. Jacob Dixon asks, what city is this for? Well, this is for all cities, essentially. This is usually for American cities. If you have an international skate park, the process may be the same. You can just work with the local government and get it done. You have, it's different for every community, but most US cities are the same. Let's see, anything else? Jill Winsby Fine. Do concrete parks ever need resurfacing? How often and how much would that cost? That is an awesome question, Jill. Do concrete skate parks need resurfacing? Sure, they do. Older concrete skate parks do often need resurfacing. Need is the operative term, right? Is the question here. That's the variable that we don't know about. If it feels like you're riding on asphalt, maybe you can do maybe you can paint it and it'll help fill in some of those cracks. You can do potentially a DIY style skim coat with some self-leveling quickcrete. After, you got to do your research and you got to work with the city. Generally, if you have a skate park that's still rideable, that's concrete, and people still kind of like to go there and it's an old school design, keep it and start working on a new skate park, because it's likely that the one skate park in town still isn't enough to, if you have 40,000 people in your town and you have one 10,000 square foot skate park, I think you probably need more skate park. Put it on the other side of town, make it more accessible, make it new. Then you have 2 skate parks. If you can, don't tear down a concrete skate park just because it's a little rough. But in general, maintenance is a good question. You'll want to take pictures, resurfacing for a concrete skate park is an excellent question. You'll want to take pictures of what you think needs resurfacing, send them to a skate park construction company and say, hey, how much to where it needs to be? See what they say. Get a couple quotes, get 3 quotes always. That is the last question, folks. We're just over an hour. Thank you for spending the time with us today. We really appreciate it. Hit us up. Let us know if you have any more questions. We're here to help. This presentation should be available again on Facebook, YouTube, and as a podcast. Go out there, get active with your community, have courage. If you don't have it yet, just get started and it'll find you. Thanks for doing what you're doing and thinking about getting involved with your community. My name is Alec Beck for the Skatepark Project. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.